Rhyme Torrents is an internet-based music forum started in the 2000s and was also featured on the Rainbow Family podcast. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, as seen in the picture, a true leader polls while everyone else is behind him, and a dictator, or a boss, sits while everyone else polls. Now, the pioneer of nerd rap is MC Chris, who started in the 2001 era on a show called C-Lab 2021, and also for his most popular role as MC P-Pants on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. He's probably definitely the most popular out of the genre, with songs about Star Wars and Harry Potter and the like. The genre, which I prefer to call nerd rap, is mostly about Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars, video games, and that's definitely the one thing that everyone has in common is it's definitely video game inspired music. Mindless Self-Indulgence is definitely a popular and successful band that incorporates 8-bit sound effects into their music, and also Hyper Crush are my friends, and they tour internationally, and their first album was called The Arcade. They're good examples on how one could make video game inspired music and be a big success in the music industry. Little Flip had a song called Game Over, which was a video game inspired song that was mainstream on the radio, and he's a Christian if I'm not mistaken. Same with Katy Perry. She had an 8-bit song that was on the radio and was mainstream that featured Kanye West, and once a Christian, always a Christian. Now in 2006, the forum released its first ever compilation, Rhyme Torrents Volume 1, featuring MC Frontalot, who was featured on G4, the premier video game station channel, and had his documentary covered Nerdcore Rising. I prefer to call the genre nerd rap because, like gangster rap, it's simply a different form of hip-hop with a specific topic attached. The album featured such talents as Benjamin Bear, YT Cracker, Little Nix, Nurse Hella, and a bunch of other talented musicians, some which were also on the follow-up album Rhyme Torrents Volume 2, along with new up-and-comers, such talented acts such as Rye, High C, The Frontal Little Squad, Bedlam Rock Pavement, and MC Hawkins, followed by Rhyme Torrents Volume 3, which featured Beefy, who had the hit single Internet Celebrity, and then also Dr. Octagon, which is Cool Keith, DJ Qbert, and Dan the Automator, and they were all featured on Tony Hawk's Underground, which probably had one of the best soundtracks of all video games. My friend DJ Smash and DJ Qbert had a scratch-off in a tournament back in the day in which DJ Smash actually won. Other musicians on the album are Funky49, Shale Riley, and Monzy, who's performing at Stanford, along with a bunch of other talented musicians. Then it was followed up by Rhyme Torrents Volume 4, which introduced us all to Rappy McRapperson, who definitely had a super big hit single called I'm a Gangster, which I remember being showed to me by my cousin Adrian. Also, MC++ is performing at his university, respectively. MC Jeff Z, Zero Bit Rate, and the first lady of the nerd scene, MC Router, also known as Leet Geek Beat. Next up is Volume 5, which brought us Ill Gil, who's been kind enough to host all of the Rhyme Torrents Halloween specials. Also, Big Tizzle, Ultra Clastron, Audio Blender, and MC Rection, who did an album with Rappy McRapperson that was super awesome. Then 2007 rolled around and Rhyme Torrents Volume 6 was released, featuring MC Lars, who tours nationally, M-Seep, Zealous One, Betty Rebel, and Schaefer the Dark Lord. In 2007, Rhyme Torrents Volume 7 was released. It featured predominant acts such as Megaran, who is a high school teacher, a Christian, and is also doing music festivals, and recently has made a music video featuring a bunch of WWE superstars and is working with The New Day. Next up is super producer from LA, OG Don Vito, followed by The Ranger, one of the best rappers in the genre. Also TYT, who apparently went to prison in Japan because he showed up with some painkillers that were recently made illegal. Hopefully they free him immediately, because that's not fair. They should have simply confiscated the pain pills or deported them. That they free TYT, let my people go. Amen. Also Hormones, who made one of the best songs ever called Till Death. Plus a lot of other talented musicians. 2 years afterwards, in 2009, Rhyme Torrents Volume 8 was released. The cover featured a bunch of the musicians and Kabuto the Python, who is one of my favorite of the genre. Next up is Epic One, who also had some supremely awesome music. Followed by Sample the Martian, which I am guessing is a girl. I'd like confirmation. Also Mr. B, who has some pretty good tunes. And Hamstar, who is on the first RT Volume 1 album and has his voice sound like a hamster. Rhyme Torrents Volume 9, the ultimate compilation of nerdcore hip-hop, was released 2 years afterwards in 2011 and featured yours truly. I actually had about forgotten I was even on the album. It featured plenty of returning musicians and also a bunch of brand new ones, such as Emergency Pizza Party, a supergroup of some nerdy hip-hop musicians. Crime Star 1, who was super awesome. Hopefully he's still around. Untested Methods, who's definitely an up-and-comer. Milk Plus, Smiling Like No Tomorrow. Followed by Danger Aaron, who was the site's administrator, and him and I were in the semifinals of the 1vs1 rap battle. He wound up placing in second place. The album was 3 discs and over 3 hours long. By then, the forum was very active with 3,000 plus members all collaborating and working together, and new albums are being released on a regular basis from familiar names and even up-and-coming brand new musicians. It lasted until about 2014, and then the website went down, and Danger Aaron apparently wasn't funding it anymore. The site was brought online again as soon as OG Don Vito took over and started the website again in 2019, and the first project was Rhyme Torrents Volume 10. However, COVID happened, and so the Internet vs. COVID Volume 1 was released instead. That was in 2019 and 2020, and then by the time 2022 did roll around, I helped OG Don Vito finish Rhyme Torrents Volume 10 once the Squish Squash Squad and Rhyme Torrents merged. The Squish Squash Squad being a bunch of 8-bit inspired, mindless self-indulgence inspired metal bands and rock bands and hip-hop bands all combined into an international group of collaborating musicians. And it picked up about the same time we had in 2007, where the album was over an hour and a half, filled with plenty of familiar names and a bunch of new ones, such as the Myspace sensation 8-Bit Suicide with Anthony Vingus, a guy named Big Stat who's worked with Method Man and Redman, along a bunch of other A-listing musicians. Him and OG Don Vito made a song for the album. Fellow Myspace-era musicians of super success, Electric Dragon was definitely on the album. Led by Spratzaman, the leader of Electric Dragon and the founder of the Squish Squash Squad from back in 2006. Nerd Funk Gangsta, who's super awesome. And I found some songs from my hip-hop group that I had called Team Woo from Stockton. It's Team Woo and Adomo too. I was offered a record deal, but I turned it down because it didn't include my 2 other friends, Michael and Jared. And then also we received a different record deal, but I didn't find out about it until after the band had ended. Rhyme Torrents Volume 10, comprised of musicians from the heyday of Rhyme Torrents from the mid-2000s and a bunch of new musicians from the 2020s, all wrapped up into one. And a quick summary of Rhyme Torrents would be its rise in 2006, with its peak in popularity at 3,000 plus members in 2011, And then its fall in 2014, where the website was down for 5 years, and then it was resurrected again in 2019. Now it's at about 60, 70 members, and hopefully it reaches 3,000 again, and even more this time around. I am now officially the administrator for both the Squish Squash Squad and Rhyme Torrents, which, like I said, merged. So Squish Squash Squad's new official home is rhymetorrents.org. And we're at Squish Squash Squad Volume 7. And possibly I plan on having Volumes 8, 9, and 10 released relatively soon. I'm in college at the moment, so it'll probably be during the fall semester into the spring semester of 2024. Lord willing, it'll be a super success, and also Talks of Rhyme Torrents Volume 11 is in the works as well. However, a lot of the people are mostly on Reddit nowadays making anime rap. Hopefully everyone returns home to the forums and we can make Rhyme Torrents 11 be as big as Rhyme Torrents Volume 9. One of the things that kind of led to Rhyme Torrents' downfall is when they tried to make a new version of it called Nerdcore Now, where Danger Aaron was also running it, and they had Nerdcore Now Volume 1. However, there was never any follow-up albums, and that was kind of the end of the website. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, super thanks to Geno Boost, who is the leader of GameMusic4All.com. And it's definitely one of the best things that was produced from Rhyme Torrents, with all kinds of super awesome albums that you would not find anywhere else, such as the Sega Genesis Loser album, which was superb, an ode to Sega Genesis. Such awesome collaboration albums such as Here Comes the New Challenger, Volumes 1 and 2, which I still listen to ever since the 2007-2008 era. I still listen to those albums, and they are awesome. Geno Boost is always doing his live hip-hop performances. You can find him on YouTube. And the website has produced some definitely timeless albums. Now I want to go through a list of some extremely talented musicians that I did not find any photos for, and hopefully they're still around making music, such as XOC, Pops Ghostly, Bazooka Joe, Fatty Goodness, Nomad, who has some super awesome music, Stevie Kincaid, Jolly Mus, which actually he said my music wasn't that good, and then covered like my entire album, so it must have been good enough for him to cover the whole album. Neely and DJ Dig Dug, Fatback Supreme, Billy the Fridge, and Star F. Also, Ecomob. I'm surprised they weren't on Rhyme Torrents Volume 9. Other video game inspired musicians that are definitely worth listening to is Super 8-Bit Brothers, Super Powerless, and Lionhat. Also, the entire Squish Squash Squad. If you like your music in 8-bit, chiptune, and rock and hip-hop, you would definitely like to listen to the entire Squish Squash Squad family. Also, in regards to the Nerdcore Now album, Volume 1, the top 3 musicians that I definitely like listening to that stood out a lot was Soup or Villains, MC117, his song Bulbasaur was perfect, and a guy named Adam Warrock. There are still music festivals for the active hip-hop enthusiast, such as Megaran's new festival that he's having that's probably already passed and was a success, and currently something called Nerdcore Days 2023, as you can see in the poster. Now, if you're looking for further studying into the genre and would like to know more about the history of nerd rap in hip-hop, there's a documentary called Nerdcore for Life, as seen in the poster. There was also Scrub Club Records, which has 147 albums archived by Mad Hatter. Other than that, I've been your host, David Blake Mercer, and I, like I said, am the administrator for the Squish Squash Squad and Rhyme Torrents. It is still online, and hopefully, well, who knows, Lord willing, that the website reaches 3,000 plus members again, that is everything, and that wraps up the documentary. Thanks so much for tuning in, watching, and listening, and may you continue to watch, to know what to pray for, and so to speak, quick to listen, and definitely listening to some living words, some awesomeness. Adios.